It would be near impossible to pitch a game like Half-Life 2 today. I mean, you could definitely try, but just about every AAA studio out there would steer clear of something so seemingly chaotic. After all, it's a 14-hour-long campaign, told over 13 chapters that constantly shift between drastically different subgenres and that introduce new mechanics as often as they shelve them. You see, in a day and age where the media we consume feels so clinical and artificial, so tailor-made in some lab somewhere to suit every palate equally, something like Half-Life 2 is a publisher's worst nightmare because it doesn't mesh with their carefully curated market research or what the industry at large considers best practice. Now, in all fairness, it is a game that on paper should never work. And if you took all the ingredients that went into making it and gave them to just about any other developer, you'd end up with some kind of disjointed Frankenstein's monster of a game. However, in the hands of Valve, those same ingredients became one of the most influential and acclaimed titles ever made. One that I would compare to a perfectly put together multi-course meal. Now that's a pretty strange comparison to make, I'll be the first to admit that, so why don't I start from the start? And I hope you're not hungry.
So wake up, Mr. Freeman.
Unlike most first-person shooters at the time, Half-Life 2's opening chapter, Point Insertion, is in no rush whatsoever to get to the action. At the start, it is essentially a walking simulator where your only way of engaging with the world is to roam about, observe, and pick up objects. And as you do so, you'll start to get a taste for what kind of world you're going to experience throughout. You hear people talk about their loved ones going missing, or their luggage being taken, or their water being spiked. You feel the oppressive air as they're forced through checkpoints and to wait in line for rations. You even witness them being rounded up, beaten, or worse. In a way, this chapter is the Amuse-Bouche. It's a little nibble to tide you over for the meal to come, and it does so, in large part, due to your lack of agency. Throughout Point Insertion, you're ordered around, pushed around, even chased around by civil protection, which serves to gradually build up this animosity towards them, this feeling of, oh, just you wait until I can fight back. It's meant to whet your appetite, a feeling that's only amplified by every glimpse of what's waiting for you in the not-so-distant future. The APC in the alleyway, the Strider passing in the street, the train bound for Nova Prospekt. In a way, it's sort of like when, in a restaurant, you watch other people's food being delivered to their table before yours. It teases you with what could potentially come your way. And even the environment itself is something that will return later on, as in Chapter 10 you revisit the same plaza in City 17, but in a far, far different context. So, by letting you take your time to explore it now while things are still calm, the game lets you pick up on more details with ease so you can appreciate their contrast later. But that calm can only last for so long because by the chapter's end, Gordon is chased by civil protection and is forced to scramble through apartments and across rooftops before finally being saved by Alex Vance.
Oh, and by the way, nice to finally meet you.
A Red Letter Day is an extremely short in-between chapter that serves as an appetizer in which the story and the gameplay take a sharp turn. It's here where the bulk of the main cast comes together for the first time and gives us our primary goal of traveling to Black Mesa East. And it's also here that we gently transition between two styles of play. We go from a helpless Gordon who's forced to take refuge in Kleiner's lab with Barney and Alex, to a Gordon who's fitted with an HEV suit and armed with his signature crowbar. From then on, the way you interact with the world evolves because you can now destroy things, like planks, boxes, those annoying little city scanners, and pretty much anything that's gotten in your way so far, including civil protection.
The Combine's reckoning has come.
Chapter 3, Root Canal, starts with you drawing first blood, as you kill a pair of officers who are assaulting two civilians. In the process, you get your hands on your first of many guns. It's a simple pistol, nothing all that glamorous or impressive, especially when compared to what you get later on, but it definitely feels familiar. And that sense of familiarity carries over throughout the chapter, because it is the closest thing to a traditional first-person shooter that the game gets. Now don't get me wrong, it is still distinctly Half-Life, with its interesting level design scenarios and light physics puzzles, but when compared to the rest of the experience, Root Canal would be closer to a pasta course, as it is by all means approachable to even the fussiest of gamers. Moreover, it is a longer meal to get through than those that came before it, with hints of those previous chapters mixed in. There's the same oppressiveness that's found in the city, as felt through the many civilians who are either hunted or are forced to take refuge. And the chapter even manages to replicate that same helplessness you feel from the beginning, by having a hunter chopper chase after you with no way to destroy it. Outside of these moments though, the rest of the chapter follows a pretty clear gameplay loop. You encounter civil protection or manhacks, kill them, gather supplies, solve a puzzle or two, and then repeat. It almost runs the risk of becoming predictable and repetitive. However, just as the taste is starting to linger a little too long on your tongue, the end of the chapter comes around to change things up once again. There, you make it to a resistance base, a place you think you can finally rest at, only to be bombarded by pods from the sky that house headcrabs that can turn people into zombies. With your position once again compromised, you're forced to flee, but this time by airboat. And it's here that Half-Life 2 makes its first of many drastically unusual game design choices, even by today's standards.
That gun came off one of the same 100 choppers that you're up against.
Water Hazard is a pretty substantial chapter that I'm calling the Fish Course. Partly, I'll be honest, just because there's a lot of water in it, but mainly because it offers a really fresh experience with its open game world that contrasts nicely with the claustrophobia of before. Also, it is a lot more start and stop compared to the previous chapters, with plenty of obstacles thrown at you that you've got to find a way around, which is quite similar to how you'd have to work past the bones to get to the meat if you're eating fish. At a glance, this chapter is so detached from what we've just been through, but in actuality it is a repetition of it. We start off the chapter just like Point Insertion, as the Hunted, but of course at this stage we've got an arsenal of weapons at our disposal, including a crowbar, pistol, SMG, grenades, and a revolver. Yet we still have no way to take out a hunter chopper. So as its shots keep rolling out and its mines keep pouring down and the music keeps ramping up, that idea of just you wait until I can fight back rings true once again. And just as it does, we meet more Resistance members who outfit our boat with a pulse cannon. Here, similar to a Red Letter Day, our way of engaging with the world shifts as we switch to the Hunter once more. However, as familiar as the airboat becomes by the end, this is the only chapter it's ever featured in, and that's very strange to me because I can't help but think about how much time and effort it must have taken to implement, to get its speed, its steering, its aesthetic, and its sound just right, and to ensure it interacts properly with all the other physics objects in the world. I mean, if you watch Valve's 20th anniversary documentary, you'll hear how even one of these aspects sometimes takes months upon months of playtesting and fine-tuning to get right. And yet, you'll never see this vehicle again come the next chapter. Recently, I finished Batman Arkham Knight, and like most people, I enjoyed it, but the constant use of the Batmobile really soured my overall experience of it. I thought it was the coolest thing ever at first, sure, but the issue is that they didn't know when to let it go. It's funny, there's even a moment in the game later on where it gets dramatically destroyed only to be replaced shortly after. And then you have Half-Life 2, where they make you leave your ride on the side of the curb unceremoniously. Which, I mean, fair enough, because by that point you've already arrived at your destination, and so it served its purpose.
Sure. Come on, Gordon. Let's go have some fun.
Black Mesa East is the first real chance you get to unwind from the hectic events of the previous chapters. Now you're no longer on the run, nor do you have to deal with any enemies or puzzles. Instead, you're surrounded by familiar faces like Alex and Eli, who are more interested in getting Gordon back into his old lab coat than they are in sending him back out to fight. It's in this chapter as well that you're given arguably the greatest weapon in all of gaming, the gravity gun, which you then test out by playing fetch with Alex's pet, Dog. So not only is the game letting you take it easy, but they've now even given you a gift. If I were to use one word to describe the atmosphere at this point in time, it would likely be homely, because part of me wants to stay here for as long as possible. But like Poultry, which is usually used as a transition from the lighter part of the meal to the heartier one, Black Mesa East is a very stark cutoff point in the game's story and tone. This is the calmest, most optimistic the franchise will ever be, up until, honestly, I would say the rocket launch all the way at the end of episode 2. While the previous chapter took something tangible away, this one aims to take something emotional, because just as things seem to be looking up for Gordon, the Combine attacks and forces him to flee to Ravenholm, alone.
And who is this? Another life to save?
Chapter 6 is where Half-Life 2 makes its most sudden turn, becoming closer to a survival horror game than anything else. This is a dark, dreary chapter that's devoid of all the light that came from Black Mesa East before it. And even with the inclusion of the Father Gregory character, things become incredibly lonely, incredibly fast. In jumping from subgenre to subgenre, the risk is always that you'll alienate some of your audience along the way. And I'm speaking from first-hand experience here because this is the part of the game that younger me could not for the life of me get through. I mean, for a 10-year-old kid, this area is nothing but terrifying. But just like everything else in the game thus far, it serves a very important purpose. With any semblance of a living society now gone, there are no stations to heal you or recharge your suit, no citizens to encourage you to keep going, and on top of this, the zombies you encounter throughout are both tougher to kill than the Metro Cops and drop no supplies to speak of. In this way, Ravenholm grabs everything that you might have taken for granted away, and it makes you long to experience them again. The civilization of point insertion and a red letter day, the simplicity of root canal soldiers, the sunniness and openness of Water Hazard's map, alongside the comforting hum of the airboat and the infinite ammo that came along with its mounted gun. Then, of course, there's the atmosphere you just left behind in Black Mesa East with all of your companions. All of it seems so far away now. Everything in Ravenholm works towards the same end, to make you feel isolated in this town bathed in bloody meat. I particularly love how they chose to never have Father Grigori physically be by your side until the very end. It really adds to the loneliness by giving you no one to rely on, which is pretty fitting because this is a chapter that is trying to encourage you to utilize your surroundings, a skill that's going to be very, very important in the coming 2 chapters. But to get there, you've got to first make it through Ravenholm itself. To help in this endeavor, the designers unite you and Grigori and then shower you in all the supplies you could ever want, so you can finally let loose like you've likely wanted to from the very beginning. It's just like in Water Hazard when you finally get the pulse cannon installed. Once you and the father fight your way through the graveyard, he raises the gate for you to leave, but you're not out of the woods yet as the levels take you deeper and deeper into darker and darker territory. It's at this point that the nightmare feels like it'll never end. This has become your new normal, but just as you start to feel this way, there's a light at the end of the tunnel to take you back to the outside world. However, after all that, the chapter still isn't over. What else could it possibly want with you? Well, it still needs to show you how much things have changed during your handful of hours away. As you walk along the train tracks, you encounter enemy snipers shooting at zombies. The sound of a gun being fired that isn't yours or Grigori's is strangely comforting, except when it's trained on your head. Afterwards, you come face to face with the Combine, who've now rolled out more serious units that use a more powerful weapon, one that you naturally get your hands on, the game's way of rewarding you for everything you've gone through thus far. But as you continue, you hear something wholly unfamiliar, the sound of gunfire met with opposing gunfire. When you enter the building, you see for the first time so far, civilians, or rather rebels now, fighting back. It's a triumphant sight, but one that comes at a price. A major price. It's crystal clear now that there was a before Ravenholm and an after, for both the player and the world. The cost for all this meat is ultimately blood.
I couldn't have asked for a finer volunteer.
That got a little dark there at the end, but Chapter 7, Highway 17, and Chapter 8, Sandtraps, choose to drastically shift tone, locale, and subgenre once again, this time by giving you your second and final vehicle of the game, the buggy, which will eventually also be unceremoniously taken away from you by the end, but at least here though it lasts for 2 chapters and is stolen by a Combine dropship. In moving from the somber, suffocating Ravenholm to a more open-ended, vibrant atmosphere, the game creates a contrast similar to the one found between Root Canal and Water Hazard. And again, the gameplay loop is centered around riding your vehicle and getting out whenever there's obstacles or enemies in your way. The major distinction here is that instead of being a light appetizer or a familiar pasta dish, Chapters 7 and 8 are a cheese course with widely different flavors, textures, and accoutrements at play. I say this because both chapters give us so much variety in such a short amount of time. You've got the buggy to manage and more Combine roadblocks to overcome, but now you also have to worry about antlions, which burrow into the sand and ambush you if you disturb the ground enough. And the game certainly hasn't forgotten about zombies either, throwing them into the mix between encounters. Sometimes you'll be fighting one faction, other times you'll be going up against 2, sometimes even all 3, in very quick succession. The benefit of this is that when they eventually overlap, you can take a step back and watch them go at each other, which is something that I wish more games would implement because they always feel like their NPCs either have undying loyalty to you and you alone, or want you dead above all else. There never seems to be an in-between. Anyways, just as the combination of enemies you fight changes, so too does the context around the combat itself. There are, of course, moments when the fight comes to you, just as has always been the case, but now there are moments where you are the instigator, with plenty of optional combine outposts to raid. Other times, however, you're the one put on the defensive, forced to hold down the fort and endure waves of oncoming enemies, either by yourself or alongside more resistance members. Take this section at the lighthouse as an example, where combine just keep on coming dropship after dropship and don't stop until you're finally forced to abandon the outpost, the people, and your buggy entirely. However, there are moments like the end of the 8th chapter where you're trying to avoid combat altogether in a little floor is lava section, after which you're then forced into a fight with your first Antlion Guardian. It's after this encounter that you're given the last item in your arsenal, the bug bait, which allows you to command those annoying insects that have been harassing you for the past 2 chapters. And it's with its help that you and your bug army break into Nova Prospekt. But before I continue, I want to reiterate just how unusual it is for a game to feature so many different mechanics and subgenres, only to abandon them completely. We spent a chapter with the airboat, 2 with the buggy, and now we're being given bug bait, which again is only useful for this coming area. And not to get ahead of myself, but later we'll be introduced to the squad mechanic, which is only relevant for chapters 10 and 11. And yet the experience so far has been exceptionally cohesive. What I find most unusual about Half-Life 2, however, is the restraint shown by the people who worked on it. I can't even begin to fathom how eager they must have been to keep many of these things for the long haul or to keep reintroducing them later on. And I would understand why. We're talking about a lot of blood, sweat, and tears for things that are there 1 minute and gone the next. And we're also talking about an over 20-year-old game here. A lot of what they did was treading new ground, so that must have made it infinitely harder to walk away from anything. It all seems like a waste if we view it through the lens of what is traditionally considered art. Usually, something's value, its prestige, is heightened the longer it lasts. In literature, in painting, in sculpting, in architecture, everywhere except for cooking. Food, as an art form, is ephemeral. You can't frame it in a museum or create a digital copy of it to preserve its experience, because the artistry of food mainly comes from its being eaten. To appreciate it means to destroy it, and if you were to decide not to eat it altogether, then it would just ruin itself anyway. Likewise, Half-Life 2 doesn't ever let itself spoil. It has you enjoy what's in front of you while it's in front of you, and then it's on to the next course.
I'm not saying goodbye, Dad. We'll meet you there.
By Chapter 9, our hatred for the Combine has only grown. They've been a thorn in our side since the very beginning, disrupted our peace in Black Mesa East, and as recently as the last chapter, stole our buggy and likely slaughtered any resistance members still left at the lighthouse. But their reign of terror against us pales in comparison to what they've done to the world more generally. Before the events of this game, they flooded Earth with all manner of creatures. They weaponized them to help subjugate the human race. We've seen the aftermath of this everywhere, especially in Ravenholm, and now it's time that they get their just desserts. It is time for us to enjoy the sweet irony of commanding an alien army to destroy them. This entire game, they've had the numbers, they've had the upper hand, but no longer. And as you dismantle them from the inside out and make your way through Nova Prospekt, the cherry on top is a long-awaited reunion with Alex at the start of Chapter 9A, Entanglement, where the 2 of you try to save her father. While the antlions are no longer there to help you, Alex and her multi-tool are more than enough to even the odds, especially when she gives you access to the Combine's own turrets. Together, you're able to find both Eli and Judith, but keep the latter on a short leash after finding out she betrayed the Resistance and brought the Combine to Black Mesa East. However, the leash clearly wasn't short enough, because while you and Alex are distracted, she uses the teleporter you were all going to escape with to steal Eli away, leaving you and Alex to hold down the fort as it recharges. And once it does, it transports you all the way back to Kleiner's lab, last seen in a red-letter day.
Dr. Freeman? We're coming with you.
A dessert, at least for me, is something that's always on the back of my mind if I'm enjoying the place I'm eating at. Although, unfortunately, they're often so hit or miss, which is a huge shame because they come at the end of a meal, the worst time for anything to fall flat. Well, Chapter 10, Anticitizen 1 has nothing to worry about in that regard. It is a beautiful ode to everything that came before it, a perfect culmination of a rebellion that's been brewing since the start, and a time for us to exact our sweet, sweet revenge. We're taken back to the same City 17 from the beginning, now no longer helpless. And I'm not just referring to Gordon here because the citizens themselves have also mobilized and taken up arms. One of the first things you see, in fact, is a group of them yanking a screen down from the plaza that's been spreading propaganda for God knows how long. And when they're finished, they turn around and join you in your fight. This is the squad mechanic I mentioned before that'll only be around for 2 chapters. It's not much different from commanding the Antlions in Nova Prospekt, mechanically speaking, but emotionally, the game makes you care for their well-being a lot more. The number of citizens around is finite, so you can't just send them at the enemy carelessly. Moreover, they're much more animated than the Antlions and can even comment on things, like when they take damage or have to reload. And on top of all of this, they can help you out outside of combat as well by giving you health and ammo whenever you're low. And it's with their help throughout this and the next chapter that you're able to take on the oncoming Combine onslaught. This whole dynamic serves as a major contrast to the events of Point Insertion. That being said, you're still running through cramped apartments and getting shot at on rooftops, but it's much more of a fair fight this time around thanks to all the tools at your disposal. This is how most first-person shooters at the time would have started their game, but in Half-Life 2's case, they waited until the halfway point to do so. And I think it's a brilliant decision because it feels so liberating now to bring the fight to an enemy that has had the upper hand for so long. And even though it'll soon be shelved, the squad mechanic only strengthens that feeling, as it lets you fight alongside the very people you've seen suffer at the Combine's hands. It is a chapter that throws almost everything it's got left at you from start to finish. It even has Alex show up for a very short while. However, she's quickly captured and taken to the Citadel, your next destination.
See you when I see you, Gordon.
The reason that I said that the last chapter almost throws everything it's got left at you is because chapter 11, Follow Freeman, exists. They could have easily made Anticitizen 1 the dramatic and climactic lead up to the Citadel, and if they did, I don't think any of us would have batted an eye. But they didn't. Instead, they doubled down and refused to take their foot off the gas. We are now dealing with more rebels to save, more Combine to fight, snipers to avoid, zombies to take out, dropships to deal with, gunships to shoot, mortar fire to avoid. Oh, and there's Barney too. But if all that wasn't enough, for the first time in the game so far, you get to go up against Striders. Many Striders. This is the Petit Four of the game, the chef's complimentary bite-sized desserts. A little way of saying thank you for eating with us, and what a celebration of the game thus far this chapter is. I mean, please just stop for a moment to really look at what's going on in the gameplay. I start off in a garage, and as I leave, I see a Strider to my right and sprint to the nearest building in pure desperation, only to come face to face with 3 Combine elites. I get rid of them fast and take a quick breather before rushing back outside and into this little trench for cover, only to be confronted by even more troops. Once they're out of my way, I take refuge again in another building. This one at least has supplies, so I try to grab whatever I can while avoiding oncoming fire. Afterwards, I dart out to the right, only for the wall in front of me to be utterly destroyed by a second Strider. I then try to return the way I came, but soon realize I'm between a rock and a hard place, so I double back. I quickly duck, pull out my gravity gun, and use a nearby overturned car for temporary cover. Then, when I get an opening, I make a beeline for what seems to be the exit. But it's not safe just yet, because I see a couple of enemies in the distance, only for the ground beneath me to get blown apart, making me easy pickings as the Combine swarm above me and rain fire. It is chaos incarnate like this pretty much the whole way through the chapter. But when has Half-Life 2 ever been predictable with the things it throws at you? This whole game has been training you to be nothing but adaptable, and now it's putting all that training to the test in back-to-back-to-back situations. Until finally, you briefly meet back up with Barney and Dog before going into the Hornet's nest of the Citadel alone.
Gordon would never make any kind of deal with you.
By the time Chapter 12, Our Benefactors, comes around, you'll likely be completely gassed out. You fought and endured, you're ready for your meal to come to a close, so you signal to the waiter to get the bill. But before it comes along, a final farewell gets placed on your table. A shot of alcohol to settle the stomach. Or, in Half-Life 2's case, a supercharged gravity gun to settle the score like never before. The game becomes a survival horror once again, but not for you this time. No, you are the horrific force, as you right-click your mouse and instantly kill any enemy in front of you, ragdolling their body before left-clicking and sending it hurling towards their own allies at such a force that it kills them too. Elite, non-elite, a dozen of them, 2 dozen of them, it doesn't matter anymore. The game is letting you indulge in a gluttonous power fantasy. As you rise through the citadel, Dr. Breen tries to talk you out of your destruction. More propaganda from the Combine puppet. But now you can just rip whatever screen he's using to communicate with you right off of the wall to shut him up. Look how far you've come. The only way for anyone to possibly stop you now is if you turned yourself in, which is exactly what happens as Gordon surrenders in an attempt to make it closer to the top. There, we finally reunite with Alex and Eli, but under much worse circumstances than in Black Mesa East. Here, in an effort to stop the people from rebelling further, Dr. Breen tries to get you to turn your back on the cause, but it's his turned back that gives Judith enough time to sabotage his plans instead. Now free, all that's left to do is retake your gravity gun and finish your march to the very top, where the dark fusion reactor is waiting. As you enter the elevator, recharged and ready, Alex tells you to do your worst, but also to be careful. One last push to the top. All the Combine can do now is slow you down, but you are inevitable. You fire energy ball after energy ball until it can take no more, and just as you do so, the bill is handed to your table. The night is over. The experience has come to a finish, and now it's time to reckon with what it all cost. Except time gets slowed to a standstill. The bill's right there in front of you, but you aren't allowed to see the total.
Time, Dr. Freeman?
What an amazing game. Even 20 years later, it holds up spectacularly. Every last course of it. It doesn't meander with any specific flavor for too long to the point that you get tired of what you're tasting, and yet it maintains a cohesive identity throughout. I would argue, in fact, that its eagerness to keep you on your feet and experiment with so many different things is a perfect reflection of the narrative that Half-Life 2 is trying to convey to you. I mean, think about it. It's a story about an insurrection. People who have had more than they can take and choose to fight back despite lacking in every single way. They don't have the resources or the technology or the manpower to match the Combine, and the last time they tried, the war lasted a total of 7 hours. It wasn't a war of equals then, and it still isn't one now. And it shows, because the resistance is a complete mess. They are utterly fragmented, forced to jump from plan to plan and do what they can where they can to stay ahead of the enemy. They're even fighting out of their apartments with grenades and guns lined up on their kitchen counters. This is guerrilla warfare. There's no other way to describe it. Because while the resistance can't match the Combine's force in a straight-on battle, they can even out the odds by being so unpredictable. Just like the game itself, which has you walking around helplessly 1 minute, shooting at civil protection the next, then cruising along on a boat, taking on a town of zombies, driving around in a buggy, controlling an army of alien insects, commanding a rebellion from the ground, and diving headfirst into the enemy's ranks afterwards. It jumps from mechanic to mechanic, subgenre to subgenre, forever keeping you guessing. And because of this, to get through Half-Life 2, you have to be a jack of all trades. To stand even a chance to defeat the Combine, you, like the rebels fighting for their freedom, must be adaptable and open to anything that comes your way, even if it's gone the next minute. You must be ready for everything. Okay, that was a lot to drop on you at the end, I'll admit, but I hope you enjoyed the video all the same. If you did, let me know in the comments below, and maybe share your experience with any of the Half-Life games you've played. And while you're down there, if you could like, subscribe, and or share if you care, that would mean the world to me. See you next week. Ish.